keep in mind about the global order that is changing is, as Mr. Gramsci would put it, the old world seems to be fading, but the new world has not yet taken shape. There is a gap at this time, and this is a gap that is not only a challenge, but it is an opportunity. And what I would like to stress to you is that we should watch out that we not focus too much on the form of this new world, this post-US based rules system, but on the content. By that I mean, we can talk about the decline of the power or the challenges to the World Trade Organization. We can talk about the difficulty in running the United Nations, an institution based many times on the end of Western values, the International Declaration of Human Rights, the structure of the UN Security Council, as we talk about the structure of these institutions. For Americans to talk about NATO, to talk about alliances with Japan and Korea and Australia, for people around the world to look at this structure, you can lose sight of what the content is that the structure is supposed to lead. So as we talk about emerging rule order, yes, we can talk about the change in the Westphalian state system, that which began in 1648, where states were the units of diplomatic thought. We can rearrange those particular chess pieces, but I would urge you to think of the problems that those chess pieces are set up to play with. There are three main problems that we must deal with. Those three, far and beyond any things that have to do with traditional statecraft, are climate change, the technological revolution, including biotech, and the domestic problems of governance, including identity politics, the politics of the future of a liberal system. There are very few countries in the world that don't call themselves a democracy. And the crises for these orders. In other words, they are splendidly vague, they are splendidly difficult, but we are kidding ourselves if we talk about the post-American order and begin to talk about its component parts, if the new order that we create does not take into account climate change, if it doesn't take into account biotech and other technological changes, and if it doesn't take into account the way people govern themselves. When I was ambassador in Pakistan, I sent a weekly cable to my boss, Hillary Clinton. And as those of you who were here remember, I had plenty to write about during the time I was here. We had plenty of problems. But my last cable that I wrote predicted that there may be, at some point in the future, a war between India and Pakistan. And I said, if there is going to be a war between India and Pakistan, it will be over water. Water is the key. All of the rivers that come into this part of the world emanate from the plateau in Asia, from the Himalayas. So this is not just an India-Pakistan issue, this is a China issue. This is a question of glaciers that are melting. This is a question of the infrastructure that people use to try to figure out how you dam rivers, how you deal with the distribution of water, how the Indus Water Treaty, creaky as it is, how it survives or doesn't survive. In other words, if the new world order, if the new emerging multilateral institutions and bilateral approaches cannot take on an issue like water, I fear for the relationship of India and Pakistan, and indeed not only for you. So it's the crises that come from climate change, from the definitions of how you deal with healthcare, how you deal with the technological structure of your economy, how you deal with moving from a textile-based economy to a tech-based economy. Again, a critique I made of some of my colleagues was that the policies of Pakistan were very often looking for new ways in which to export textiles to the United States, to get rid of tariffs, to try to figure out how a friend, America, can help a friend, Pakistan, by getting more textiles into the United States. And while this made sense to me, I hoped that at some point my Pakistani friends would stop talking about textiles. Textiles which are the lower end of technology and the lower end of profit and of value added. That I looked at all of the talent in Pakistan and I looked at the young people working in the financial and the technical area and said, I would like to see software coming out of Pakistan. I would like to see innovation coming out of Pakistan. To focus on what you have been good at, to me, was not good enough. In other words, I'm trying to emphasize once again that when we look at where the challenges are going to be, that we not look to the way that some of my military colleagues in the United States have looked, that they show a picture of America with more warships than anyone else in the world, but a changing world in which those warships are docked in San Diego, rusting, while the new world wars and the new conflicts of the 21st century are fought in cyberspace. That we're not looking back, but that we're looking forward. So again, no return to the old order of Westphalia. And I commend to you, because I'm an academic, 2 books. It would not be right for me not to assign you 2 books. The Israeli futurist Yuval Harari, 21 Lessons for the 21st Century, and the American technician Jamie Metzl on hacking Darwin and the genetic code. Now, all of us were trained for things other than understanding the genetic code. But if we don't understand this, we'll be left behind. Now, one thing that I sense in politics is that this area that I talk about, this time when the old system is dying and the new system has not yet been created, this is, I think, for Pakistan specifically, a wonderful opportunity. You may not see it this way because of the uncertainties that you face in an unwieldy country with enormous income inequality, with 200 million people, some of whom still suffer enormous poverty. You have an opportunity to basically take advantage of the changes that are taking place and to look beyond simply the constraints of the way things have been done in the past. I would urge you not to look, I would urge Pakistan not to look at decline and fall in the way that traditional assessments like Paul Kennedy at the United States have said, or the so-called Thucydides trap argument that people have made about the rise of China and the relative decline of the United States. It would be a major mistake in my mind for Pakistan to calculate who's going to win. We calculated for 70 years that we would work with the Americans. Now we measure this again. It looks like the Chinese are winning. Let's go with the Chinese. I would urge you not to look at it in this zero-sum way, because the solutions to what China will do as a rising power and the solutions to what America will do as a relatively declining power are linked. We will not do them despite anything that my current government says. We will not do anything in the absence of the other. This is Pakistan's opportunity to break out of old patterns, or as I've said in previous talks that I've given, the old narratives that people have about their background, and to try to free themselves of this. And specifically, what I envision is a Pakistan that is a regional leader, that is in many ways, to coin a phrase, a light to other nations. A Pakistan that can reach out to a neighbor in hopefully peaceful Afghanistan. A Pakistan that can reach out and use its generosity and its skills and its potential economic power to help develop its friends, and they are friends, in Central Asia. A Pakistan that can work with Iran, which is a troubled but potentially very powerful country. A Pakistan that can show its diplomatic power by being a voice to bring together Saudi Arabia and Iran. That is to say, rather than seeing itself as a historical country that has been at the end, the receiving end of the machinations of, say, the United States or the Soviet Union or China, that Pakistan is expanding outward now in this new era where the American hegemony is perhaps less and the Chinese growth is still uncertain. It's a time for Pakistan, if it chooses, to have an aggressive, and I would say a very creative foreign policy based on its skill, based on its good reputation.